So I left Chicago June 14th and finished my trip in 59 days and rode around Lake Michigan. It's 1,500 miles, and I rode in an ocean rowing boat. So if you guys see those boats that cross oceans, they're like huge. So I brought a part of my boat today to show you what it's like. It has a foam core and then glass on the outside, just like your rowing boat. Or maybe your rowing boat with that one core. But you can go ahead and pass it around. Obviously, the bottom of my boat was pink because I did it for a breast cancer charity in Chicago. So that's really where my story actually starts, and I kind of want to go back and share with you a little bit more about the cause that I did it for and the program that I run in Chicago. So when I was at Michigan State, I rowed, and I used to volunteer with the program with breast cancer survivors. And I learned a little bit about the relationship between exercise and breast cancer. And I used to work with survivors and teach them how to row, and it was kind of the first time, it was the first time I ever learned how to coach rowing. And it was while I was still learning how to row as well. So I really enjoyed it, really enjoyed coaching and wanted to do it more, and loved the fact that I could contribute to something that was so great. So these women, whenever a woman goes through, a man goes through a breast cancer experience, you're told that you have a certain percentage of cancer coming back in your life. So you might be told you have a 20% chance of cancer coming in your life. And if you exercise regularly, that reduces it by 50%, so it makes it a 10% chance. So if you're told you have a 50% chance, it turns to a 25% chance. It really is a huge tool, especially because so many of the women that I was working with, they find that cancer was an experience where they lost control of their body, and they didn't feel like they had control of their life or what was going on. And as you guys might know as rowers, I'm sure that you feel like at practice you kind of get to own that. So maybe you had a crappy day at school, but you get to come to practice and you get to control like what's going on. You get an hour of your life that is just focused on this one thing, and you don't have to think about anything else. And if you've had cancer, you don't have to think about the fact that you had cancer. If you had a crappy day at school, you don't have to think about that crappy math test. And so it's a really great program. And I always grew up, my mom is here with me today, and she always taught me that it was important to volunteer. And so I used to volunteer all through college and through high school. And when I got to volunteer with this program, and I got to teach rowing and share the sport of rowing with these survivors, and it was this group of women that needed exercise more than anybody else needed exercise. It was more important for them. I really just felt great about it. And so when I moved to Chicago after college, I decided to start coaching, and I started coaching at it's Ignatius Chicago Crew. It's a Jesuit college prep in Chicago, and they had a rowing program. So I started coaching, like 2 years into coaching. I was working downtown, blah, 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 had the boring corporate life, and I decided to start a program for survivors that was similar to the one that I had done in college. So we got started, established as a 501c3 charity, and we started with 4 or 5 women. And I can remember, I was very young, I was like 22 years old, and I used to go to these breast cancer support group meetings, and I had this poster, and I just said, like, I want to teach you how to row. And I can remember being really young and thinking, like, well, this is going to be weird to coach women that, like, could be my mom or my grandma's age. And just trying to remember back to the experience that I had in college and that I could give to something and feel really good about it. So I kept moving forward with it, and the program now has about 50 women in it. So we serve 50 women in Chicago, and they practice 4 days a week. And something that I decided to do this summer, and the reasons I decided to row around Lake Michigan, is that I wanted to share the facts and build awareness around exercise and breast cancer so that more survivors could learn about why it was important for them to exercise. So just getting in front of you, getting in front of people, letting them know that these facts were out there, and then also to raise funds for the organization that I founded. So I decided to buy a big yellow boat that had been across the Atlantic Ocean, and I wanted it to be a rowing adventure. Then in June, I left Chicago. So I'm sure you guys are familiar. So I left Chicago. I rode north along Wisconsin into Green Bay, up and around the Upper Peninsula. And I ran into all kinds of obstacles. My grandma actually passed away from cancer on the trip. She was diagnosed and passed away during the trip. A week later, I'm sure you guys may have heard on the news that I was sexually assaulted. there were so many challenges that came along the way, and there were so many times that I could have stopped. And when I go back to why I decided to start the organization and why I decided to do the trip and why I decided to continue, it all came down to the same thing. And it came down to these women that I lived with, and I'd seen them go through so much. So I saw them go to chemo in the morning and then come to practice at night, and they would just push through things. And I didn't want to stop. I had so many struggles along the way, but it was one of those things. There were plenty of people and plenty of opportunities to quit, and I think the important thing is that you guys hear the story, that other people hear the story, and hope to gain inspiration from it, not only in making service a part of your life and how that's very important, but also to be able to push through things that are incredibly hard, and to do it publicly was very hard. And now I have the opportunity to go around and share my story. And we raised $125,000 for the organization, which is a huge amount of money for a small nonprofit for a rowing program. That's a lot of boats. It's a lot of coaching time. It's a lot of insurance. It's all these things that make these programs run. So I'm really, really fortunate to be able to share my story. And obviously, I want you guys to ask me questions about the boat, because I'm sure you'll have questions about them. But I'll give you a little bit more information about Liv, which is my boat. It's a 700-pound ocean-going rowboat. So it's got a foam core, as you guys can see in the rudder, and then it's fiberglass. It's been across the Atlantic Ocean twice, from Africa to South America. So I purchased it from a girl that rowed across the Atlantic, and she purchased it from a guy who had rowed across the Atlantic. And it's for sale now if any of you want to go on an adventure.
Not before the end of the season. It's all power.
And it's a really amazing boat. I wish I could have it here today, but it's bright yellow. And its name is Liv because it's Norwegian for life and protector. And it did a great job protecting me all summer. There were 2 airtight, watertight cabins. So there's a cabin where I would sleep, and there's a cabin where I had food and all my provisions. So the cabin that I slept in was kind of like a coffin. It's pretty tiny. At the widest point, it was probably like 4 foot wide, and at the narrowest point, which is where the bow was, I mean, my head was like right up to the bow, and the rudder was behind me. So it was pretty tiny. The boat itself is 19 foot long, so I would say like 6 or 7 foot of it was my sleeping cabin, and there's like 3 or 4 feet for rowing in the middle, and then in the I'm sorry, it's the stern. So, yeah, the bow is where my head was. It's more fun when people ask you questions. Let's see those questions, guys.
How was the row?
I rode 10 to 13 hours a day, and I burned about 5,000 calories a day. So I never really got to eat like enough food that I was actually spending. So I think in the first week it's funny because I had to come into Racine, Wisconsin for something for the boat. I think we had something we had to repair on the boat. So I weighed myself, and like a week and a half I lost like 10 pounds. It was really bad. I made it all back, don't worry. Like every time, as soon as I got home, I like ate. My hands are really the thing that is most messed up at the moment. But when I got home, I had a lot of tendinitis issues. When I was training, so you guys are athletes, so training-wise, this is my schedule for like a year and a half. So I woke up, I rode for an hour, I went to work because I have a job, normal. I worked at Groupon. You guys buy Groupon? So I worked at Groupon from 7 in the morning to 4 p.m. And then I would go to a 4:30 hot yoga class until 5:30. And then I would come home and eat and walk my dog. And then I would go to CrossFit. You guys ever heard of CrossFit?
Yeah.
So I do that at night. So that was my life for like a year and a half, which is basically no life. I had no life. But it was something, that I committed to and I wanted to do. And it's really strange. Now I actually really miss it, miss the training. And now that I'm home and feeling good, I'm getting back into CrossFit and things like that. But it was definitely something. Obviously, if you guys ever, you train for your fall races, for your spring races. It's just like you train for a marathon. You taper, you do all those things. But yeah, I would wear clothing in the morning to keep myself from burning too much, and then as soon as it got too hot outside, I would wear less clothes. But it was a really hot summer, so I didn't wear that many clothes. it was also like, it was really hard because, you know, every day, the thing about crossing the Atlantic or making an ocean crossing is that you usually go with trade winds and you go with like favorable weather. So you go at the right time of year and you go when the wind is always going to blow you in the right direction. So even if you're sleeping, you're probably going the right way. But the thing about Lake Michigan is that like you wake up every day and the wind is different and the weather's different. And so some days I could wake up and I could get like 30 miles and it would be hard, but it would be like a solid day and the wind wouldn't be pushing me the wrong direction. And then some mornings I'd wake up and the wind would be against me and I get like 5 miles in one day. And you're rowing 700 pounds. Oh, so like you're rowers, so this is great. So you're rowing at like 16 strokes a minute. That's like all it is, but it's really heavy because, you know, the boat itself, it's like rowing an 8. I guess it would be kind of like rowing an 8, because that'd be like 700 pounds.
Like rowing an ox by yourself.
Yeah. And it's, yeah, I'm trying to think of what else. It's just a really, really heavy load. So the biggest thing was protecting my back and using my core to protect my back. So I was 16 strokes a minute, and I wasn't rowing full slide because you really can't have long, beautiful rowing strokes when you're trying to move 700 pounds every time. What else? You guys have music. I did have like a language program on there to learn Italian, but I don't know where I did it. I was too tired at the end of the day. I'm like, oh, forget it. It's too much.
Would you drop anchor at night?
Yeah, great question. If I was going the wrong direction, like if the wind was blowing me the wrong direction, and even if it was blowing the right direction, I wanted to sleep and not worry about it. So I had an anchor. So there were 3 different anchors. There's sea anchor that's like really heavy that keeps you from drifting. And then like a lighter sea anchor, and then I had like actual like physical like anchor that I threw down into the water. And depending on how deep it was, I'd use different ones. But I wasn't that far from shore. I was like 2 miles out. So the funny thing about Lake Michigan though is like 2 miles out from shore can be 100 feet deep, or it can be like 6 foot deep. It's really strange. So depending on whatever.
How did you measure the depth?
I had a depth finder in the boat.
Okay.
I had lots of gadgets. Yeah, lots of gadgets, which, you know, I think about now, and I often think, like, when I had all these gadgets, but they would break, and then they'd be like, Jen, you really only need oars. Like, you know, because I'd freak out because I'm alone. You don't have anybody to talk to. And I'm like, the GPS just overheated! Crap! I guess I have a compass. And then, you know, you're the only person to talk to yourself about.
Yeah, did you talk to yourself a lot?
Oh yeah, all the time. All the time. Like, and every night I recorded, so now I'm writing a book, and that's also taking up a lot of my time, but I'm going through all these videos I made, so like every night I would either talk in a voice recorder, or I just like on my computer and I would make videos of myself. And I would just be like, well, today sucked. And then I'd like go into like what I did. Or like if it was great, you know, I'd be like, today was so great. Like, let me tell you, computer. Like, I really had a lot of conversations with myself. And I took a lot of pictures. And if you guys go to my website, it's rowforrow.org. And also I have it's probably more fun to go to the athlete page on Facebook because I have like all these pictures of like, I have this whiteboard that I would put up and it would say like how I was feeling. And it kind of became like this like sort of mantra with my trip. And so some days were really like great, and I'd be like, I got 30 miles done, like best day ever, we raised 10 grand today. And then like 2 days later I'd be stuck in some wind and I'd be like looking awful and just, you know, like no shower and hair.
Was there a way to like keep in touch with people? Or, like...
I had, for the most part, my phone worked, but it didn't always work, and obviously, like my internet connection was really, really spotty. But I always tried to. I updated my blog, so I have blogs throughout the whole trip that you can read about my adventure, and there's also like people who guest blog, so my friends or my family would blog. But then all of it is on it's facebook.com/row4row, and that's my athlete page. You can follow it on there.
Was it hard to keep yourself like fully like motivated to get through all of it?
Oh yeah, definitely. I went, you know, through a total spectrum of like feeling great one day to just thinking like I'm just gonna sit here and cry, and sometimes that's what I did. You know, and I was alone, so I never really. I mean, I could call somebody and talk to them, but no one would ever understand, and I couldn't always talk to someone because my phone didn't always work. So. It was really challenging. It was definitely the most, you know, mentally challenging thing that I've ever done, but I look back on it now, and I'm sure you guys do this too, with different races and different goals that you set for yourself. You know, you're glad that you went through it, and you think back to it, and you're like, well, that was worth it, and then, you know, I'll probably have some other crazy challenge in the future.
Yeah,
Sorry,
it's kind of
Mom.
addicting.
Like, once you kind of figure out, like, all right, I can do this. All right, what's the next thing? And I don't know, when I got in my own head and it got negative, the thing that I would do is that I would just remind myself, like, all right, I don't have to think about the fact that I've been out here for a month, or that I have another month to go. All that I have to think about is today, and I just have to finish as many miles as I can do today, and that's all I can control. If I thought about anything more, like if I thought about a week ahead, or even like 3 days ahead, it would just make me feel overwhelmed. So I try to think about that now, you know, in my everyday life. You know, just really all you have to do is get through the day, or a practice, or a workout, or a winter training, and then you're getting better, and you're getting there. You're still making progress, even if it's 1 mile an hour and you can walk the shore of Lake Michigan faster than you're supposed to be.
Let's do last 2 questions, and then if anyone wants to stay, we'll do a group picture, and then whoever wants to stay and continue asking questions is welcome to. I just know there's some carpool. So we'll go Nick and Travis, and then group picture, and then everyone else. Feel free to keep asking questions. These are really good questions.
Yeah, they're great.
How bad were the blisters on your hands?
Well, we already have some. They turn into calluses pretty quick. The blistering wasn't that bad. Mostly because, like, I don't know, they just turned into calluses, and it was more like, I didn't do any feathering either, so it was just hanging, and it had more to do, like, I got tendonitis in all my fingers because my hands were like it was like the claw, because they were like used to being like this.
You got an
Or,
So like, yeah, when you stop it, it just stuck like that kind of?
well, I wake up in the morning and I like couldn't make a fist, and I couldn't like straighten them. So it was just extremely painful. Like, well, actually, in the first week, it went in different phases. The first week, my hands started going numb, and I was like, that can't be good. And then they started to hurt, and I was like, well, at least I can feel them. And then they went numb again, and then now they hurt all the time. But they're getting better. I'm sponsored by a really great physical therapy group in Chicago. I also have, like, yeah, that's the other thing too. When I decided to do this, I asked a lot of people for help. Like, I knew that I did not know that there was everything to know about rolling around Lake Michigan, mainly because no one's ever done it, and who am I? Like, I'm just a girl who go to college. Like, what do I know? So I asked a lot of people for help. I asked a CrossFit gym to sponsor me, and they did. Core Power Yoga sponsored me. That was also really challenging. It was just as hard as like starting the program, and just as hard as the row. It was like going in front of people and being like, this is my dream, and I'm going to do it, and I need your help, and you might tell me no. And a lot of people told me no. Like, that's the thing, is that like I approached a lot of CrossFit gyms, I approached a lot of yoga places, I approached a lot of companies to give us money so that we could do it. So yeah, that's another fun thing.